He's angry about mortgages. It's Angry Mortgage. He's swearing. He's cursing loud. He's old. He's opinionated. And he's been doing this so damn long. This program is about mortgages, and this is mortgage advice, but the advice may not apply to your situation. Contact licensed mortgage professionals for specific recommendations before you make decisions about mortgages. You may not agree with Ron, but if you don't, he thinks you're wrong. Oh, and did we say there is a lot of swearing?
Well, so we got a great show today. Ben Rabidou is founder of North Cove Advisors and Edge Realty Analytics. Now, listen, mortgage brokers, mortgage brokerage owners, network bosses. Sometimes you don't listen to our podcast, but somebody in your organization listens to our podcast. So I'm telling you, this is the best analysis and, more to the point, the best graphics that subscribers have an opportunity to use in the mortgage business. I mean, this is, look, all you mortgage peeps out there, you got to understand what your customers want to see is the truth. They want to see real statistically verified facts. And a lot of them like graphs. Me, I'm not a graph guy, but Ben is the king of graphs and charts and information and analysis. So if you aren't subscribing to Realty Edge Realty, sorry, I'll get it right someday. I'm getting old. You got to subscribe. Okay, just Google Ben Rabidou. It'll all come up. Okay, or Edge Realty, it'll all come up. All right, but this is a useful subscription. I know a bunch of you mortgage peeps are cheap. I know this, okay? But you brokerage owners and network bosses, you guys, it's just great stuff, and you should recognize it, okay? Welcome, Ben.
That's the best intro I've ever gotten. Appreciate that, Ron.
There you go. All right, so this is very timely. We've had both the January and February Ontario, and mainly like Treb's half of it, right? The big GTA real estate board. And we've had all the numbers in for 2 straight months. And it's actually, home sales and prices are shittier.
Worse than we thought.
They could actually, this literally looks like there's no end in sight. It's worse, okay? So what do we think about that? So we know it's down. It's all record territory.
Yep.
Pretty much record territory in BC too, I think, right?
Yeah, BC's actually deteriorating faster, I think, than Toronto from the
all
data
right,
I'm looking
let's just think about that. Is there a cycle to this? Was Ontario ahead in the cycle?
You know, it's a great question.
BC's catching up.
Well, BC's got some interesting dynamics. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the whole kind of land claim Cowichan decision. I know you've talked about it here.
Musqueam decision.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's just getting crazier. So I had a view that, you know, if you're potentially going to be operating in the real estate market, if you want to buy this year, like, I don't know, you got to think that dynamic is throwing at least a little bit of a chill over it, because we know that lenders are tightening out there. It's hard to get financing and anywhere where there's these aggressive land claims going on. I think that might play into it. I've gotten different feedback from people out there. Some realtors I've talked to said, they don't really think that's a thing, but man, I got to think that's impacting confidence somewhat out there. So it looks worse. If you look at the pricing decline in Vancouver, it's actually getting worse than Toronto. It's accelerating the downside.
Well, I think Ontario was way ahead of them at
without
some point
question.
last year. Okay.
So, Toronto's down, you're down 25, 26% from peak. Vancouver's only down 8-9% from peak. Like, so you're right. It has not been
they
the
got
same
room
decline.
to go down.
Without a doubt.
They got a lot of room. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, you were early on this. You talked about Southern Alberta, overbuilt, got over their skis, and I think we've watched 7 straight months of price decline out there. So that's about right. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just started. It started in Calgary first. We're starting to see it now spread into Edmonton.
Really?
And what's tricky is, I was quite optimistic on Alberta kind of 2021, because you could see where the sales demand was through the roof. Inventory was incredibly tight and builders weren't building anything. So when you see that setup, you know that you've got a runway for price appreciation. But the thing that I always underestimate is how quickly builders out there can build. Very different than here.
So different. My God, it's so different. Like here, everything is so hard.
Yeah.
And out there, it's like reasonable.
Well, it's very quick. Yeah. And so they went from being, I would say, dramatically undersupplied to being quite oversupplied, at least cyclically, in the course of 2.5 years. And so now you've got a lot of single family, a lot of condo units completing in the next 1.5 years, and then just a ton of rentals coming. And that's true mostly in Calgary, less so in Edmonton, but recently we were seeing Edmonton start to cool off as well.
How's BC doing on the rentals? You made some good points on that.
Yeah, terrible. Look, I keep making the point. When you're you like to say predictions of shit business, and I agree with you completely. You're going to get a lot of things wrong, but when you do nail a call, you do have to do a little bit of victory lap. So like I was calling for this rental slowdown a 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago, because you could see the setup. You knew population growth was going to slow. You knew there was this enormous tidal wave of supply. I still think people aren't appreciating the headwinds facing the rental market, and that's particularly true out in Vancouver, well, right across BC. So when I do the math, like Ron, you can look at the rental units under construction. I'm talking just purpose-built rentals, and you can compare that to the existing universe of rentals. So how much is coming versus what's the existing supply. And out in Vancouver, right across BC, it's like 15%. So they're going to grow their supply by 15% over the next couple of years as the units complete into an environment where population growth is going to be very slow. So the math just doesn't, there's no way around like a really significant uptick in vacancies, and they're already sitting at 30-year highs. So like we're going to unprecedented levels in Vancouver.
So just for the part of the audience that is, when they hear this stuff, they say, what? Like, why would you do that? And they need to understand the dynamics of the CMHC support. So just want to touch on that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you kind of go back in time, we know coming out of the COVID pandemic, you had this enormous kind of irresponsible population boom. At one point in kind of 2023, we hit 1.3 million people. That's how much the population was growing, 1.3 million people in 1 year, of which 800,000 were temporary residents. So international students, temporary workers, asylum claimants. They're all renters. So we were adding 800,000 renters. So that cohort over the period of 3 years grew by 1.7 million people. So in a 3-year period from kind of 21 to 24, we added 1.7 million renters.
It's really also really important to understand there's tremendous provincial imbalance on that, right?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Ontario and BC, massively disproportionate.
Massive.
Yeah. So huge, very good point. And so now we're at the point. So if you back up, so you had this very predictable rental crisis. Yep. You had all those renters, the population. Of course, you're going to have issues. CMHC recognizing some of these pressures and the fact that we really hadn't built purpose-built rentals for the 30 years prior.
No, absolutely not.
So there was a legitimate need to incentivize new rental production.
That was a kind of an old program, if I remember correctly. Yep. That was dating back to like 2018-ish kind of a thing. It didn't get that much traction until the time you'd suggest.
Exactly. So they started. You started seeing CMHC come out, really incentivize a lot of construction, back a lot of the loans, really favorable terms for a while. And it just, look, developers are really good at building. If you give them the capital to build, they're going to build. And so if you give them very cheap financing backed by the government, they're going to build. And so we're at the point now where if you look across the country, we have almost 200,000 rentals in the construction pipeline, rental units, which is unprecedented. That's about 8% of the existing supply. The one thing you can say is as it relates to housing policies out of Ottawa, this is by far the most successful housing policy. It's the only, like, you think about how crappy some of the other programs are, this, Build Canada Homes.
Utter shit.
Total shit. They don't deliver a damn thing.
Nothing is as bad as the Housing Accelerator Fund. Right. And Build Canada Homes is just the Accelerator Fund, but worse with more people involved at the top end and higher salaries, okay?
Right.
Because the Housing Accelerator Fund was the most dismal failure you could ever fucking imagine, okay? The signature of the old Trudeau Liberal signature housing program, hey, we're going to incentivize people to fill in the missing middle, build a lot of multifamily in transit locations, and we're going to force them to push down their development fees, and we're going to give them this money to essentially build social housing. And that way, because they want the money, they'll do everything we ask. So they did fuck all that anybody asked, okay? And they gave them the money anyway.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly. Which kind of became one of the hallmarks of the previous government, just handing out money. But all that to say, this is the one program that actually has succeeded in delivering supply.
Because it's really just a mechanism to allow private enterprise to do the work. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue fundamentally with the program. It's going to be phenomenally successful in the sense that it's going to deliver a lot of supply
100%.
and it will push rents lower. But that's where we're at. So you kind of had coming out of the pandemic, the need for rentals. We've overshot the other direction. Happens to be, occurring at a time where the feds are also dramatically tightening the immigration taps. So you kind of have two forces meeting. You had a lot of supply and not a lot of demand.
Now, I've gotten a few calls about that rental program, and they're typically from sort of a version of a mom and pop operator. So that they built an 8-unit thing, or they built a 12-unit thing, or whatever, 20-unit thing. So not a massive tower. They weren't tied into a REIT or a pension fund or anything like that. And they're calling me and they're saying, hey, I got a problem. Like, CMHC wants another $480,000 and it's finished now. It's finished now. And they say, well, we've recalculated and you got to pay me all this money.
Yep.
And I don't have that money. So what am I going to do? Jesus.
Ron, you are hitting on something. I was banging the drum on this, a year ago. And it was our friend Dan Foch that put me onto it originally. And he mentioned it, and I don't think he realized how big of an issue this was going to be.
Yeah.
And him and I kind of, just kind of tossed it back and forth and came to the conclusion that, this is going to be a problem. So just to tee it up for the listeners and viewers, if we look at what's happening in the condo market right now, you've got a scenario where people entered pre-construction contracts kind of 21, 22, when prices were at peak.
Oh, vastly inflated.
Inflated relative to resale prices. Now that they're completing, they're realizing that value is not there. And they're facing what is effectively a capital call. The lenders are saying, if we're going to close this, you need to come up with a much bigger down payment. Or maybe in some cases, they get this bullshit blanket appraisal.
Oh, you need the magic blanket appraisal.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point being, if you can't get a fairy tale blanket appraisal, you're stuck with a capital call where you got to come up with money.
Yep.
And I said at the time, this CMHC program has a mechanism embedded into it that looks similar to that, in that there's this rental achievement holdback. And the idea there is CMHC will say, okay, if you want your takeout financing, you need to prove your pro forma. So you assume that rents were going to be $2,000 a unit. You assume you're going to get this level of occupancy within X amount of time. Show us. And what we're finding is, in some cases, because the rental market's deteriorated, they can't prove the pro forma. And so CMHC is basically saying, we're going to hold back that last tranche. You need to find secondary financing. It is exactly what you're describing. It's a capital call. Nobody saw it coming. And I think it has the potential to be a little bit disruptive in some of these markets.
Well, it's certainly going to be disruptive to the small entity that took this on. So because the woman I'm talking to, in one case was a man, in the other case was a woman. The woman I'm talking to is almost in tears. She's saying, I can't raise this money.
Yeah.
Because just to oversimplify for the listeners and viewers, it's like they gave you CMHC made sure you had the money to finish the project. They helped you in a massively good way on the construction side. So you got it built. But they want to see what the end result, as you said. They want to see, okay, how does it fit now? You built it for if you're building only 12 units, that's not a lot. You probably finished in 2 years. And okay, we want to see how things look now. Oh, look, they don't look as good. So if you want to move on to the next phase where we give you permanent financing, which you have to do, we've got you on a leash, okay? You got to come up with some more money.
Exactly.
And there may be no money to come up with.
Well, and what's interesting, Ron, is we had this kind of migration of pre-construction condo speculators that left the Toronto market and instead showed up in some of the Alberta markets and places like that doing this exact thing. So they went from, you notice that the pre-construction condo market's dead in Toronto.
Dude, dead. They couldn't, it's like literally unbelievably dead.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing happening. Two straight months of record low new condo sales. Yeah. But at the same time, you had this booming demand for these small, MLI insured rental units, rental developments out in Alberta. I saw the marketing. It was from the same condo people that were selling Toronto suddenly showed up selling this product in Alberta.
We're going to have to call this the Toronto virus. Okay, that's what we should be calling it. I know that Vancouver's the original, the OG, the granddaddy of preposterous pricing, batshit crazy pricing. But the reality of speculation on rental real estate we got to just agree that Toronto is,
without a doubt,
it is the hotbed.
It's next level.
It is where everybody came up with their burr bullshit. Oh, nobody knew they needed an investment coach for rentals, but they got a shit ton of them. Okay, like that was a whole business. All right, we had people on. We had a whole television network devoted to talking about you're going to buy a place, fix it up, going to put in a basement suite. I mean, literally a whole goddamn cable channel was assigned to that job. All right. So it's the Toronto virus, and it went to Alberta, bigly, and it is quite a feature in Atlantic Canada. I know it is. I know it's a feature in Atlantic Canada.
Same Toronto buyers
same
showing up out there.
Same kind of thing, okay? Same kind of thing. So.
It's funny you mentioned that because I would put, when I look across the country at the regions that are most overbuilt for rentals, I would say Atlantic Canada is probably number one, and then BC and Alberta.
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising that you say that because I think that same dynamic, like, it's crazy. Atlantic Canada very regularly goes through periods where the population declines, like even in a normal cycle, right? They have outflows of people leaving, coming to Ontario. That's a normal cycle for them. And now you layer on top this dramatic tightening from the feds, like there's a good chance their population is going to continue to print negative. And oh, by the way, they've got the equivalent of 16% of their existing rental supply coming to market in the next couple of years. Like it's going to be a problem.
No, I think what we've all got to realize too, and this is in no way, shape, or form disrespect to the people living in Atlantic Canada, but it's historically been lower income provinces. They have if you look at their average income in those provinces. So how in the name of Jesus are you going to attain higher rents? Like we're gonna project rents that are 40% higher than what people were paying 3 years ago. I mean, in a low income, let's say low income, but on a lower income than other Canadian provinces, how the fuck does massive rent increases work?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
They don't. The pro formas were always crazy, and now these are going to complete. They're just not going to pencil.
So just again, a quick synopsis. We will see, I guess it's about a 2.5 year time frame. We're going to see a lot of rental product come on the market. And sometimes when you say, oh, well, it's going to be 15% of all the rentals that ever existed before, people say, oh, 15% is not so bad. Let me explain something to you. It is really fucking bad, okay? Like, it is profoundly bad. Unless you have you got to go back to that million people coming in every year to support that kind of growth in rental inventory. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, that's right. The math here is pretty simple. So, if you assume nationally you're going to get 8% increase in rental supply, maybe generously we get 1% population growth. Like at this point, the budget office is saying 0 out to the end of 27. That looks right to me. But let's just say you get 1%, maybe 2%. It doesn't really matter. Pick your number. If you're adding 8% of supply, you're only growing demand by 2%. That delta is basically a straight feed through to vacancy rates.
100%. And this is, by the way, we have a term we apply to this in in the real estate business. We call this a death spiral, okay? Because this is more inventory on falling rents. So you add more inventory, you're going to get even lower rents, and there's still more inventory coming and even lower rents. So, wow, it's as bad as it could get.
It's going to be a problem for a couple of years. Yeah. Now, the good news, and I've made this point before.
Hey, by the way, you and I are in favor of lower rents. We're not suggesting that we're not.
Yeah. Okay. And actually, the point that I would make is I think even if we hadn't had this enormous construction boom in rentals, we were probably hitting kind of the max in terms of what the economy could support with regards to rentals, because with rents, I should say, because if we look at rents paid as a share of total consumer spending, it's at an unprecedented level. And one of the points I make is people that are in the real estate industry should actually be supportive of this, because what we've seen is the home ownership rate in the under 40 crowd has plunged in the last 2 censuses. Crazy bad. Well, why is that? We know that affordability in terms of monthly payments is a challenge, but I think a bigger challenge is saving up the initial down payment. And a big part of that is because the rent is so damn high.
Yeah, if rent's 50% of your income,
You can't save.
You can't save. It's crazy.
Right. And not only that, Ron, but I also think that some of the weak business formation we've seen in this country is the fact that young people have been so screwed over by an incredibly tight rental market that they just don't have the capital to deploy. So I do think that, like, as you look forward, if we see a period of time where rents significantly underperform incomes and it allows affordability to return, that's very good news for the next generation of home buyers. It sets the stage for kind of the return of the first-time buyer. But it also is just good for longer term for business formation for young people. Young people have just been screwed for too long. You know that.
There's absolutely lower rents is an absolute social good.
Without a doubt.
Period.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't matter where it is or how it's done. It's absolutely a social good because when rents are at 50% or over 50% of the income of the renter, you're fucked. That's it. Your society's fucked. That's all you could say.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think you've done a great job on this pod of really sort of advocating that angle on behalf of young people. I think that's why you get a lot of the penetration you do in that younger cohort is that you recognize that where a lot of boomers don't.
Listen, I mean, I am a boomer, but I am the only boomer who understood that, we did work. Yeah, that's the thing that every boomer says when you say you were lucky. No, we weren't lucky. We worked so fucking hard. I said, no, you work exactly the same as people are working today. But you could all buy a house.
Yeah.
All of you could buy a house. Like, you had to actually throw money away and you had to save nothing in order to not be able to buy a house. Like, people were buying the houses in their 20s. A lot of people. If you go back 40 years, a lot of people were buying houses when they were in their 20s.
Yep.
There's fuck all nobody buying a house in their 20s. I know there's 3 guys in Thunder Bay right now saying, I'm going to send him a comment. I bought a house. But look, I mean, it is just so low compared to what it was 40 years ago. That's why I say boomers are lucky. We were lucky. And by the way, you know, we got houses in an irrational commute from our works. Like, there's so many things were positive. So many things were positive.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about this. We're going to run backwards to this incredibly bad real estate numbers we're seeing in Ontario and British Columbia, and as we said, parts of Alberta. You know, what's your thought on this? Because it's starting to bug me, who is one of the top 10 bears in Canada on real estate. Okay, like I'll literally hold my own with anybody on real estate as a real estate bear, but I've got to start to think that unit sales have got to increase at some point.
Yep.
Because the base is so fucking low. Yep. It wouldn't take much to move the needle.
Well, so I agree completely. I'm very bearish on the rental market in the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
The resale market, you know, I don't know. Like, I could see a scenario where prices grind down maybe a little sideways for the next 5 years, whatever it might be. But there's interesting dynamics happening under the hood that I think people are missing. So the sales numbers are terrible, right?
Terrible.
They were down, and they were revised lower as well for the previous months, which people don't realize. So, like, the January numbers were revised even lower than
Is
they
that
were.
possible? Because they were
You
like
wouldn't
nothing.
think.
Okay,
You wouldn't
this
think.
is wild.
So I had said last year that I thought, remember when we had the whole initial onset of the trade war, and then sales printed these just abysmally low levels in March, and I said I think that's probably the lows, and I felt pretty good in that call. And then the last couple months, all of a sudden, like, we're getting pretty close to those numbers again. So I'm like, oh shit. But I think you're right. If you look at it from the perspective of, like, home sales per capita, we're very clearly building some level of pent up demand. Like, where we are right now is an impossibly low level of sales. It's such a low bar that I think you almost have to clear it this year. Like, it's very rare to get a worse year when you just printed a 25-year low in sales. So I think sales will be up a little bit this year. What I think people are missing, though, Ron, the big story that I see in the latest numbers is that for the last 4 months in a row now, we've seen new listings come in lower than they were a year ago. We haven't seen that in 2 years.
Yeah.
So to me, you know, this is one of the things I've been flagging is when you look at the level of new single-family homes under construction in Ontario, it's zero. Like, it's almost zero.
It's effectively zero.
So when you think about what that means, right? When you get a lot of single-family completions, it introduces a lot of resale supply because oftentimes people have to sell their existing home to move into the new one they bought.
Sure.
And so you get a lot of flow from that. As we've seen those units under construction fall to unprecedented levels, now we're just starting to see those new listings roll over. So I think you could make an argument that we've probably seen the peak for supply. I think it's a credible argument. And I think we're probably going to put in a low for home sales pretty soon. So in my mind, I think you can get to a scenario where the market starts to tighten a little bit, which does not mean that prices come roaring back, but maybe we just start seeing prices just level off or grind a little lower.
Yeah, I feel comfortable in saying prices will go lower, and prices will go lower even when sales activity picks up a bit, because this is the really important thing for people to understand. When you are in such a trough, when you've dug such a hole, developing the worst numbers on sales that people have, you're talking about 25, 30-year lows. There's twice as many people here, for fuck's sakes, okay, than 30 years ago. So when you're talking about this incredible lack of activity, to move that needle up 10% is nothing, because the base
exactly
is
right.
so low, okay?
Yeah.
So when everybody says, oh, man, you're predicting it's going to get going again. No, I'm predicting it's just not going to be as fucked.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right, Ron. Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I also think, like, so you and I agree probably the direction for pricing is down from here.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to start moderating. I think you'll start to see it flatten out. I think in the back half of the year, we'll see. I think the big unknown in that is how much we're going to see power sale continue to rise, because that really, when you introduce that forced selling into a pretty low liquidity market, it really impacts prices on the downside.
Yeah, and I can pretty much guarantee you that forced selling, particularly in Ontario, will continue for the first half of the year, and pick up and still pick up the pace of it. There will be more units powered out. There'll be more units where people must sell, or the bank is selling it, whatever the case may be. We're just observing it as a business on our own, and that really creates a low price. Like when everybody sees today, because people have gotten used to the idea that it's going on. Like, I guarantee you, there'll be a couple of comments on this show that say, how do I get the list? How do I get that list of our sales? Because the intentionality of wanting to put in the lowest bid you could humanly put in, more than $1, is so dramatic. And you do see such terrible, terrible results from power sales in terms of price reduction from the original purchase.
We're seeing it. Yeah, we're seeing units selling for 40-45% less than the 2022 sale price, which is astronomically low. But you know what's interesting, Ron, is like, had you said in 2022 to people who were really bearish, and you and I were among those people, like, this is crazy. Yep. But if you had said to people, look, you're going to get a chance to buy this 40% off these current levels, I think most people would have been like, hell yes. Right? So here we are. I think we're getting to the point where you're going to start seeing buyers be like, look, we may not catch the dead bottom, but 40-45% off a 2020 sale price, I'll take that.
Yeah, it's what's going to, that is the thing that's going to perk the unit sales up a bit. And I just keep emphasizing a bit because it's a super low base. But that's also why prices, particularly in Ontario, will keep grinding down throughout most of this year until, your point, they flatten out, until they stop falling.
Yep.
But I think there's still a big potential to keep falling.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yep.
So let's talk about new construction for a second, because those numbers are just so bizarre. Like building new homes in Ontario, and they're very similar in British Columbia. It is bad. It is really bad. I know somebody always sends me a message from, in South Surrey, we're building these townhomes now. Okay, yeah, fuck off. Those are just the only townhomes that are being built in the whole valley. But look, we know this new construction thing is just appallingly bad.
Yeah.
But what intrigues me is, For low-rise, it stopped 2 years ago. Now, I was sort of around for the 1990 fiasco, and new builds were dead as a doornail for 4 years. And so we got a little bit of runway left. But the big difference in 1990 is condos were fuck all part of the matrix. I mean, they were like 8% of new builds. And you and I know that since 2018, they've been 80%, 80%, okay? Yep. And so the condos won't come back at all. So that just leaves the only potential upside in low-rise. And I believe low-rise is so hemmed in by development fees and other constraints that the prices came down for new construction in 1990. When it finally started going again in 95. those were decent prices. Those were good prices. They competed with resale prices, which were very low in 95. They were, I can tell you, I was there. Okay. So we can't build them now, though, because we've got constraints on where you can build, and we've got these sky-high fucking development fees.
Yep.
And where does that put us, Ben? Where does that put us in a world where we're definitely not building a condo tower, and it's still pretty fucking hard to build low-rise? Where will that put us in a year or 18 months?
Well, I'll just put some numbers to it. So when we look at single-family building permits, they're at 40-year lows. 40 in Ontario, and in BC, we don't have a precedent. We have data back to 1980. It's never been this bad.
Been this bad. Okay.
Yeah. So like, there's nothing being built. Yeah, it's crazy. So, it's, I always tell, like, I have kind of a philosophy when you're trying to predict the direction of a market, it's just way easier to predict supply than it is to predict demand.
Yes.
Because we have good data on what's coming in supply. It's really hard to get know what's going to happen with psychology and interest rates. There's just too many moving parts. So the one thing we can say with a great deal of certainty is there's going to be a hell of a lot less new supply next year and the year after, and this year. And
in low rise for the last 2 years, in fact.
Right. So I think, you're in a scenario where, like, getting back to what I said earlier, I think probably we're seeing a peak for resale inventory because a lot of that new supply forces listings into the resale market. I just don't know, like, this is where maybe, you and I agree the direction of price is probably down from here.
Yep.
But if you can't bring new supply at these prices, like, at some point they have to find a floor.
Because resale's all that's left.
Right.
There is no new construction.
And so the existing inventory of resale single family is going to get absorbed in the next year or two. And you're back to a scenario, I think, where maybe we're still tight on that single family market. Like, we haven't solved anything fundamentally. What we've discovered is if you get immigration back to a sensible level, you don't have an enormous imbalance in supply and demand. Remember CMHC was saying we need 500,000 units a year and all this crazy crap. Turns out if we get sensible immigration policy, we don't. But we have not solved fundamentally the long-term challenge with bringing new single family supply.
To bring on supply that people want, because we've established that there is a market for a dog crate condo, but it's becoming very limited.
Right.
It's just extremely limited. So let's think about that what you just talked about for a second. So we've got sweet fuck all starts in BC, sweet fuck all starts of residential in Ontario. Is Quebec slowing on
their single families? Disastrously
bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing holding up the entire construction industry right now is the rental space. I had this great meme.
So I want to hear your meme, but I want to get this. I want to get this into the audience's mind with clarity. Okay.
Yep.
This is construction Armageddon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, without a doubt. It's one of the things I'm worried about for this year and next is that, we still have about 8% of our labor force is in construction, which is still near the all-time highs. You're only starting to see the signs of some weakness in some of the kind of the finishing trades, low rise. They're starting to get slow. We have not begun to feel the pain in that space because there's still a lot of units under construction. As we know, rentals, condos still under construction. As those complete, there's nothing in the pipeline behind there. So that's one of the key kind of macro risks in the next couple of years you got to really watch as it relates to the labor market, because it's not a small part of the total job market.
I interrupted your meme. That's what you mean.
No, it was just silly. Like, so you're right. You got the scenario where we know condo starts are going to collapse because they follow pre-construction sales by about 18 months.
Fucking collapsed.
And they're going to be collapsed. And we know single families collapse. The only thing holding up the entire construction industry is rentals. And we know that the actual underlying fundamentals on rentals look like dog shit. So I don't know if you've ever seen the meme where the guys, you get the police teams about to bust down the door with the battering ram, and on the inside it's a Cheeto that's holding the door lock closed. And to my mind is like, that's the police coming through the door is like construction industry slowdown, and that Cheeto is like rental construction boom that's holding the whole thing up.
Listen, you and I are the same mind on this, is that, and because I get comments from low-rise trades. And low-rise trades in Ontario are telling me, I read the comments, I look at the responses, and low-rise trades in Ontario are suffering.
Yeah.
There's guys who are saying, I've been sitting at home for 8 months. My last job is over in 2 weeks. I mean, we get those comments of people who are legitimately concerned. And we get a bunch of comments who say, well, I guess I am going into retirement. I'm taking early retirement because there's no work at all. Now, you and I know that this eventually, not too far away, spreads into high rise.
Yes.
Because those are all going to be finished. All those units by mid-2027, we're done.
Yep.
Every one of those towers is built. Okay. And then if you're telling me Quebec is slowing,
yep,
and we know Alberta's slowing, I guess all you could say is construction is fucked in this country. Well, because the rental's not going to be the same level of starts.
Exactly. So when you look at what's currently under construction, we're still just off the record highs. Mm-hmm. But that's so deceiving because when you talk to developers, they're like, we can't launch new units. Like there's nothing coming in behind these as they complete. And what's also really confusing, Ron, is like people will say, well, look at the housing starts data. Housing starts still look okay. They were 230,000 annualized last month. That's still a lot. But what people don't realize is CMHC doesn't count a start until the development's back above grade. So when you're talking about like a big multifamily, like a big rental or a big condo apartment, that can be a year to almost 2 years of construction activity just to get that development back above grade. So it's been a hole in the ground for 2 years before it's a quote unquote housing start. So that housing start is actually a lagging indicator of what's happening. It's deceiving people into how weak that construction activity is actually going to be in the future.
So it could easily be a time when all of a sudden we're startled by CMHC's results.
I absolutely think that's coming.
Wait, what the fuck? Where's this 170,000 bullshit coming from? You told us everything was fine, and now it's dropping like a fucking rock.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because you and I just see it. We just see it. We just are so in tune with the fact there are no new starts.
Yep.
Nothing, okay? I mean, CMHC can call it whatever the hell they want, but you and I both know when and most of them given up. Most condo developers have just totally given up. But when somebody with real strength in the market, like Mattamy, actually tries, they take a shot, they do the advertising, they try to price it better, they try to get it going, and they give up and they give everybody their money back.
Yep.
They give the 15% of people who took it their money back and close the project, because we saw that. We saw like 11 towers in Etobicoke. We give up. It's not going to work. Okay. And that's a big company, the biggest in the country, Mattamy. Yep. So that's a sign.
Oh,
right?
Big time. Ron, I think you're onto something. Like, I think that people are sleeping on how big of an economic headwind that's going to be this year and next year. And it's just not, we're being so lulled to sleep by the wrong data, right? CMHC's definition of a housing start is just misleading. And people don't have any idea of how much this industry is about to slow.
Sure. So it's going to be the typical government thing. So at some point in maybe March of next year, when there's 6,000 construction workers rioting in front of Queen's Park in Ontario, saying, we're all out of work, you dirty bastard, and Doug Ford will come out and say, well, friends, this is a complete surprise to me. I don't know what happened, but we're going to do something right away and you're going to be happy. Okay, like you can just picture it. Can you not just picture that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. There's going to be, what happened? Everybody's going to look around at each other, shocked. I mean, hopefully Chow won't be the mayor, but whoever is the mayor of Toronto is going to say, who would have known there's no construction anymore? Like, I mean, we got a real problem on our hands. Give us the foreign buyers. We need the foreign buyers.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's going to be panic time. Yeah.
Look, one of the things I hate in any podcast is the hosts telling everybody, well, we knew this years ago and you just weren't fucking listening. Okay. But please, Jesus, put a bookmark on this thing. Okay.
Yep.
Because there's going to be that moment. I don't know if it's 6 months, 9 months, 11 months, whatever the fuck it is. But there's going to be this moment in time when feds, provincial, municipal politicians are going to look at each other and say, hey, I think something's wrong in construction. Look at this.
Yep. This is one of the easiest macro calls to make, Ron. I totally agree with you.
Wow, it is so wild.
And people are sleeping on it. Yep.
So wild. And now, this circles back to a big question I want to ask. Because you've been ahead on the immigration file forever. So if you again, all you people out there who are not getting Edge Realty Analytics, this is why you should, because Ben's made calls on immigration 2 years in advance, easily 2 years in advance of when the shit actually hit the fan. Okay. And he's like deep on the subject. And as he said, quite accurately, who the fuck knows with demand? Because Kuzma, war starts on a Friday night. I mean, who the fuck knows, okay? But supply is measurable, okay? And the amount of people coming into the country is measurable. We never measure anybody leaving, but we're unsure of the leaving.
Starting to get there. You're right.
Okay,
you're right.
But we do measure the people coming in.
Yep.
We understand the permits that are being issued. So when you saw this immigration thing with such clarity when others didn't. Now, will immigration come back? I mean, is that going to be the answer the feds pull out of their ass for, construction seems fucked? We know the solution. Is that a possibility?
It's plausible. I think it's really unlikely. I think it becomes a slightly more plausible if the current government gets a majority. But the public polling on this is very crystal clear. Canadians were not happy with the immigration policies and it being far too loose. If anything, though, Ron, I would say that it's more likely that it gets tightened from here. The politics are such that Canadians don't support it. We feel like we've been taken advantage of. Look, in my mind, we're going to see a significant tightening in the refugee and asylum programs this year. And the reason is that we're to the point where we have 500,000 asylum claimants in the country right now. That's 1 in every 84 people in the country is an asylum claimant. And within that, we have a backlog of 300,000 unprocessed refugee claims. 10 years ago, it was 10,000. So it's 30x in 10 years.
So it was, how long ago was it 10,000?
10 years ago.
So now we're 300,000.
300,000, Ron.
Sweet
And
Christ.
within that, we know there's massive abuse. Like we have stories where, this whole extortion crisis bullshit that's happening in some communities, and all of a sudden they organize a task force.
Surrey, Brampton.
Right.
We'll name the communities, okay?
Right. And they go and they name some of the ringleaders, and what happens? Those people immediately file refugee claims. And it stops the extradition process. We've seen this. This is not hypothetical.
No, we've seen it. We've absolutely seen it.
At what point do Canadians go, we're sick of that? This is bullshit. So my point would just be, I think things get tighter before they get looser.
Because you're right. We have just seen it. I mean, you can't miss it. Okay, these guys are under arrest. Oh, they filed refugee claims. Look at that.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So, because obviously you should deport them. I mean, they're charged with, they got them on video shooting a place up. So I think we can send you back. But look, this is what I'm hearing. I don't know whether you brought it up or somebody else online brought it up, but I got this, somebody laid out a scenario for me and said, hey, I work there, and I'm going to tell you how this actually operates. The amount of energy you got to put in, if you're reviewing claims, if you are adjudicating refugee claims, if you want to say to somebody can't stay, if you want to say, denied, you got to go back. The level of energy you have to put into that denial is off the fucking chart.
Yep.
It's got to go through 3 levels of appeal. Your boss will eventually pull you over and say, what the fuck are you doing? This is so much work. Yep. Okay. It's 10 times the write-up. I mean, you got to put in like an extra, for every time you say yes, you can put in an hour. For every time you say no, you're probably looking at 40 hours work over the course of time.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, holy shit, we have set up a system that's doomed to fail.
Yeah, exactly. That was me, and that came from a whistleblower.
I thought it was from you.
So it was a whistleblower within the Immigration Review Board, or the Refugee Review Board, whatever it's called, IRB, I think it is. But they reached out to me. They're like, "Look, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm adjudicating these claims." And it's exactly what you said. They have like performance metrics that they're expected to hit. Like you have to process
this
X number.
Yep.
And he said, if you deny them, you cannot possibly hit that quota because you got to, like you said, it's kind of quasi judicial. You got to go in front of a panel and you got to plead your case and they're going to plead their case on the opposite. It's an enormous time sink. You don't get paid more to do that. And you get your supervisor breathing down your back. And so what he showed that was very fascinating is this particular whistleblower said, look at the data because we have public data on this. And you can actually see within the data that the people who have been at that review board for longer, the share of their files that are approved keep going up and up and up and up and up. And the people that where there's turnover, they're the ones that are trying to actually deny some of these claims.
Because they get pushed out, basically.
Right, they get pushed out, or they get sick of it. They get frustrated because their supervisors are breathing down their back and they just leave. So you get all this turnover where the people who are saying yes end up being the ones that stay.
So the only answer to this is legislative change.
Yes.
You just have to change the rules and say, well, if you got charged with anything, fuck it, you got to go. Or if you came here as a student, you can't claim refugee status. It's ridiculous. Okay, you were here for a specific reason. You can't say that. Well, while I was here, I realized I was persecuted. You can't. You came as a student. That's crazy. You can't,
exactly.
You can't do that. Okay, so you have to change the rules to. Although we got our old buddy Mark Miller wants to fight that, right? He wants.
Man, that guy is just.
He's a fucked up guy.
He's just caused so much trouble in this country. But look, I would say there's some pretty clear, bright lines that you need to put in. Like, for example, if you come here saying that your home country is so dangerous that you need the good grace of the Canadian taxpayer, you don't get to go home to visit. Like, there was this crazy story. Like, dude, there was this crazy story where this guy who had been claiming refugee status went home to visit like 18 times in over like a 5-year period.
To this country where his life's in danger.
Yeah, right. You're so concerned with your safety. You're like, no, we're not. We're, as Canadians, we are generous and we want to take care of people who are legitimately in need, but we don't want to be taken advantage of, and we have been for too long. So, like, you need those bright lines. If you come from a democratic country, right, where you have due process, I'm sorry, you don't get to claim that your life is in peril. So you just need a bright line. If you come from this country, bullshit.
Those claims
you don't
are
get
forbidden.
to claim. You're done. And we just clear those backlogs. The other thing I think they need to do, Ron, is just introduce a last in, first processed principle, where if you put in if you claim refugee status today, we'll process it immediately. Because that's going to dissuade people. Because right now, one of the things is if you put in a refugee claim,
you're the back of the line.
And all of a sudden, that buys you 5 years before that gets processed. Where instead, if we say, we'll process the most recent ones immediately, give you your no, and that disincentivizes more
You've
violence.
done such great work in this file. I know you know the answer to this. These claimants are not allowed to work, correct?
That's my understanding,
or at least at the most minimal level. So the taxpayer must look after them, right? Like, they have to look after them because they can't work.
Yeah.
So
it's a huge drop.
It's
1 in 84 people in the country right now are asylum claimants.
Jesus.
Like, it's crazy. Ron, that's triple in 3 years. It was 150,000. It's up to 500,000 in 3 years. Like, we have to get a handle on this. Jesus. So when people say they think that the immigration policies might get loosened, man, I don't see it. Even this government, which keeps kind of bumbling around, like, eventually, you and I don't have a lot of faith in government, but sometimes the problem is so obvious that they can't help but stumble into the right solution.
Well, I think it's also fair to say that, for whatever we may all think of the Prime Minister, he actually understands how numbers work. I mean, his background isn't as a drama teacher. So
right.
He looks at, because you and I keep seeing the notices and the suggestions coming out of Ottawa that, hey, this department's been notified. You got to lay off 2,000. This department's been notified. You got to lay off 1,800. This department's been notified. Apparently, the only place they don't lay anybody off is in CRA.
CRA, yeah.
Because I got a little bit of a whistleblower who reached out to me and said, "You need to understand, we're hiring 8,000 people for tax season." Okay, they're temps. He says they are temps, but we'll let them go eventually in the summer. But you should know this. They are all exclusively temp workers, foreign workers.
Oh.
He says, so if you think anybody's actually going to easily understand these people on the phone, you're mistaken.
Oh my God, Ron.
It's like, it just is, I thought, holy shit.
However bad you think, however dumb you think the government is, your opinion is not low enough.
Well, you have to hold out hope. And, you and I have seen these notices per departments. We've seen that it just can't be a lie. Now, of course, in the meantime, the Prime Minister invents new bureaucracies, Build Canada Homes, or we need to hire a whole new set of presidents and vice presidents to work in a procurement agency. So I always scratch my head when I hear about procurement. Well, wait a minute. You're saying we need a whole new bureaucracy to buy shit? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, I mean, how hard is it to buy shit? All right? Like, but Ron, if you're the military, it takes them 8 years to decide how to buy shit. I think, well, let's just fire all those people because we got, like, fuck me. Like you just said, we know how to build shit. Developers know how to get shit built. You give them the finance, they'll build it. We got retailers who know how to buy shit and sell shit. Like, why is it impossible for the government just to buy shit? Okay, like, why does it need a whole bunch of new vice presidents and a new boss and he's got to have a few assistants. They got to outfit a new office to buy shit.
Yeah,
okay, that's procurement. Okay, like,
yeah, we're at a 25-year high for the share of public sector workers in this country.
Good Christ.
It's got to end. Yeah. I think we're getting close. I mean, look, the one thing I would say is, and you and I probably, look, the current prime minister, heck of an improvement over the previous. You can debate, some of the policies, but he strikes me as someone who's at least more pragmatic and hopefully, knock on wood, willing to, look at some of these problems that, from a less partisan lens, hopefully.
Hey, I'll be honest about it. He is radically different than the last guy who was, in hindsight, we spent 10 years in the wilderness. Other than smoking dope, that's about it. Okay, we got that. That became legal. 10 years in the wilderness. Every policy garbage, almost. A few policies. Like, obviously, you and I don't see it, but obviously there's some people who are in poverty, got some child tax credits that was helpful to them, and all those things were beneficial. Daycare is beneficial. Obviously, low-cost daycare is beneficial. Women deserve a right to get back into the workforce effectively and efficiently at a reasonable cost. And God knows our fertility rate's so bad, we got to think of some ways to convince people to have babies at a certain point. But the rest of it is just all sheer insanity. Like, everything was just pissing money down both legs. And that's what we saw, with no improvement. In fact, deterioration of many, many things. But yeah, the new prime minister, we're going to find out. There's a lot of MOUs. Like, I mean, I think there's still no new mine has been greenlit, actually. Like, nobody's
a lot of talk so far.
A lot of talk. Nobody's built a backhoe up to it.
But at least they're saying the right things. So, like, you got to take some hope where you see it. He was not my first choice, but he's a hell of an improvement over the previous. So we'll say that. And I agree with you. I think they're tempted to go for majority at some point in the next 12 months. I don't think there's any real doubt of that, which will be a tough election. But, some of this stuff is just a fucking slam dunk. I mean, this war in the Middle East has put a red line under build a fucking pipeline to the Pacific in a way nobody could ever dream of, okay? Like, and that's the last question of the day. You and I are not war experts. We're not foreign affairs experts. We're not military experts. I want to make that all clear, because sometimes anytime you talk about anything that's a current event, people say, look at this fat fucking mortgage broker thinks he's an expert in wars, okay? So I fully admit I'm not an expert at war, but I am an expert at interest rates. So I will tell you this. It would appear that the price of gas just keeps going up very steadily, okay? Now, a bunch of people say, oh, it's just temporary, Ron. This all blow over in a minute. You'll see it's all temporary. Okay, maybe. But if it's not, like, we've seen 15 cents in like a week and a bit. All right. That's just starting. By the looks of things.
If this keeps going, we get to $110 a barrel oil, which we got when Russia invaded Ukraine. That's a problem for interest rates. That's a problem for mortgage rates. Because if inflation becomes the obvious possibility, bond yields go up. Canada bond yields go up. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, without a doubt. We haven't seen it yet, Ron, which is interesting. You see the 5 years still kind of hovering around, kind of 3-month lows, not really doing anything, which I'm a little surprised at. But did you notice we got a warning from the Bank of Canada? They gave a speech, I think, over in the UK, and they basically said there is a plausible scenario where we could have to hike rates in a deteriorating economy, right? Just because of the pressure from rising prices, gas, et cetera. So, it's on their mind.
We call that setting the stage for disaster, folks. I mean, like, they want to say, hey, we warned you. We had to raise, but we warned you. And I realized the economy is shit. But we had to do it. We just had to do it. So, when you hear that, it's chilling.
It is. I'm hopeful that, I still don't think, I would still put it pretty unlikely we see rate hikes this year. But it certainly is unnerving watching gas prices rising every day.
Yeah. It is very unnerving seeing gas prices rise every day at speed, at real speed. And that's a lag, obviously. Like, I mean, you don't feel the effects on groceries, every other thing that's delivered. It takes a while. But if gas prices, if price of per barrel just go, good news for Alberta. Give them credit there. But it tells me two things. It tells me that mortgage rates could go up. Like I didn't think it was any possibility of increasing mortgage rates. Now I do. I think there is a possibility. And separately, I think it has underlined this requirement to push oil and gas to the Pacific in ways that is just desperate. Okay, I
totally agree.
Like LNG prices have gone, just in a week, have gone through the fucking roof.
We saw Qatar invoked, what's the word? Where they
force majeure.
Force majeure, where they just said, nope, no more exports.
Yeah, we got contracts to ship you stuff. No, it's over.
Done. And you got the rest of the world begging for LNG. And oh, by the way, the previous government was like, there is no business model, no business case for LNG I mean, come on.
Even China has told their refineries to, hey, slow it down. I mean, we'll tell people to drive less. Okay.
Yep.
This is real shit. Okay. And it is a complete, again, not military expert, not a geopolitical expert at all, but it's fucking obvious to me if oil hits $110 a barrel, shit will happen.
Yeah, we got problems. Yeah, you don't have to be a military expert to see the price action.
No, you don't.
And it is concerning.
Yep. It is indeed. Ben, thank you so much. It's been a
My pleasure,
great podcast. Thank you. And I hope people gain some insight, particularly on the immigration file. Every Canadian should be thinking about this concept that we're lining people up to be asylum claimants for 5 years. And our government, by rule, must support their living while they're here for the 5 years. So it's real money, folks. Real money. Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
If you like the pod, well, don't just sit there. Go to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all the other ones and like the pod. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep being angry at mortgages and swearing about mortgages. Angry Mortgage could use your support.